name is Tracy. We are here for the Bailey's Harbor book discussion of Michael Perry's Truck, A Love Story. Not that we probably won't talk about the others as well. And a couple little housekeeping things. For this one, we've turned on the closed captioning. So if you need it, if it's going to help you, it's on the bottom. There's a little CC live transcript button that you can press to see that. So feel free to use that. A little quirk though, the chat and the live transcript won't work at the same time. So you'll have to do one or the other. Let's see, what else do I have? I have official notes here. This program may touch on varying points of view. We thank you for being open to hearing others' opinions and participating in intellectual freedom in a respectful manner. I think most of us do that anyway. You are welcome to stay unmuted if you would like to, and it makes it easier for discussing. But if you're going to have a lot of background noise, we ask that you mute, or Morgan or I may mute you if needed. I guess Morgan is probably going to have to do that. But if you find you're muted, just unmute yourself and go ahead and say whatever you'd like to say. We kind of do an open discussion here, so pipe in whenever you need. If we're having a hard time getting a word in, just give us a wave or use the chat if you need to. So thank you for coming. I have a couple little pictures to show you and a little story. And then by the time I'm done with that, you'll probably be like, let's get on to the book. Come on. So I'm going to share my screen.
Are we going to see Irma, Tracy?
Yes. Here is Irma.
Yeah.
Here's the before. This was the truck sitting in his yard in the snow. If you look close, you can even see kind of the outline of the flames that someone had painted on the door at one point or other. And these, if you had the recent edition of the paperback book of Truck, these pictures are in there, but this is so much better to see them in color. Nice. And here's the after. So it looks like a completely different truck. And he said this was, there was a movie production going on in town and they were looking for an old jalopy type vehicle. And he found Irma. So this was on the set of the movie. And then I want to show you my truck. This is, I believe, from 1983, right in downtown Fish Creek near the Alibi Dock. This was my dad's truck, and that's him and I standing in front of it. I'm about my son's age. He's 12 now. I was 11 in this picture. And this was the truck that I learned how to drive on. It's a 66 Ford. My dad, most of you know, my father passed away a couple of years ago. So this is now our truck. And this is
Nice.
our driveway. So we've had the project the last couple of years of getting it running again. It hadn't ran for a few years. So, but unlike Michael Perry and his brother-in-law, we are not anywhere near mechanically inclined. So we hired someone to do it for us, but we're glad that it's drivable. Yeah. And my husband has had to learn how to drive it now. It's a stick shift 3 on the tree. So it's been quite an adventure.
Are you going to teach your son how to drive in that truck?
I think that's mandatory. Yes. He's got to know how to drive that. Maybe on the back roads.
See, some of us grew up learning how to drive 3 on the tree. I mean, that's the only thing I had for a number of years. So it was
I never heard an accountant call 3 on the tree.
I've never heard it not called 3 on the tree, I guess, but
Right.
maybe that's just a Wisconsin thing. So the author Michael Perry says all he wanted to do was fix up my old truck, plant my garden, and then I met this woman. So there's a lot going on in this book. He's repairing his truck, he's gardening, and he meets this woman. He's falling in love, but all the while kind of speaking about small town life too. So I wanted to start the discussion rolling by just asking, what is this book to you? What of these aspects appealed the most to you, and why?
I like the way he paralleled all those 3 topics throughout the book. I really like that. It had a nice flow to it. I really enjoyed that part of it.
Jane, you're muted.
Okay, well, I really liked, I couldn't tell frequently which was the love story, the truck
Mm,
or his future wife. And like Sue just said, he blended them so well that it was really about the truck, but it was really about falling in love with, I forget her name, but yes.
Annalise, yes.
Yes, with his future wife. It was very smooth writing, and you just carried you along. Yeah, even though I'm not a truck person, it was there.
Well, I enjoyed the love part because as a person who came to love much later in life than most other people, I could identify with that, even though it was a guy that was coming later in life. But yeah, that was me.
And I like both the truck, rebuilding the truck, because I rebuilt a car when I was in high school.
Mm,
So I did a very similar sort of thing. And then I couldn't put this book down, especially when he was talking about his girlfriend / wife. That was exciting. I was hoping this was going to happen, but I didn't cheat, so I didn't make sure who it was or anything. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah, Todd read the book before I did, and so he'd be sitting over there. Oh, I hope he gets her. I hope he gets her. So I had a little preview before I started reading.
I've got a land trust t-shirt on.
Yes, yes, I did.
Mhm.
I liked his little humorous insights on life, and a lot of the things I found that I would laugh about that I could really relate to, since not just living up here, but in general.
Right.
And I guess we understood the frustration with the garden. We don't usually try to do plants inside, but you know, it's like, I don't know, somebody told us, you know, you live on an ice cube, so what do you expect? You know, so, and we don't have enough sun, and so the gardening is frustrating. So
Yeah, we can relate to Michael pretty easily. Unless we cut down all our trees, we're never going to grow very much. I can tell you that.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I thought he did a really wonderful job of blending his two milieus, you know, being in New York and going to fancy restaurants or being feted, having a what did he call it? A guide or you know, somebody to take him around, and sometimes he had to drive by himself, you know, something. But moving in those circles, you know, as an author. And then coming home and being so happy, you know, to be home and tending his garden, even if it was dying because he'd been away so long. I just thought he had a really nice way of blending those two things together and having us be happy for him having a foot in both worlds.
yeah, I think one of my favorite quotes in the book was, nobody, not even the natives, likes the cold, but cold and white you can take. Snow obscures the grit and covers the trash. Well, we're already seeing that one day of melting. It looks horrible outside.
Mhm,
Snow
mhm.
pretties up the scene, renders it bearable, whereas cold and brown leads to drink and desolation.
What did we think of his writing style? Or how could you even describe it? Could you sum up how he writes?
He uses a lot of words that I had to look up in the dictionary.
Yeah.
Agree.
That was good. It was a good learning experience.
He mentions that people complain about that, but I looked up a lot of words myself.
Yeah,
And he said he always has to look them up himself before he uses them, so
that's true.
Oh, it didn't.
go figure.
That's good to know.
Right, that is. Yeah.
I really liked that he has a sophisticated vocabulary. And I don't remember, there was at least one word where I thought, I'm not even sure I've ever seen that word. You know, it's one
Yeah,
you see a word and know that you should know what it means because you've seen it or done it before. And now I don't remember because we just lent the book to somebody last night. I went to go get it. And my husband said, oh, I just lent it to our friend. Like, okay. I liked his writing style a lot. I think I mentioned this, Tracy, to you in an email. he's self-deprecating without going over the top with that. Because I think people who overdo that, it becomes uncomfortable. And he was just kind of the right amount of not so much making fun of himself, but not taking himself too seriously. I thought that worked. Admittedly, there were a couple of descriptions, like every single item in Mark's garage, where I thought, oh, okay. It's a little too much detail, but that was rare. For the most part, I didn't feel like he did go into too much detail. He has a very pleasant writing style.
Tracy, what would you call that style of writing?
I don't know. That's why I asked you.
Yeah.
No, I've always liked him because he's kind of it feels like a mix of a down home local author with a bit of that sophistication and a little bit of a philosophical attitude kind of mixed in. And that's part of what appeals to me.
Yeah.
I have also lived in Wisconsin 99.5% of my life. So I can relate to a lot of what he's talking about. Which
Right.
made me wonder too. I don't know, with our group here, have most of you lived in Wisconsin a significant amount of time, or do we have a mix?
No.
How many have not lived here very long?
I don't really live there.
Well, true.
I think of it as a second home now, a second state, and I feel a lot of affection for Wisconsin, but I'm an Illinoisan.
I think
I
it
haven't been
seems
here
to
very
be,
long, but I'm Michigander, which is very similar.
Right. If you like his philosophical approach, I highly recommend Montaigne and in Barn Boots.
yes.
It's really good. It's really, really good. It delves into all kinds of philosophy, but down home kind of stuff. He just brings it home. You learn a lot about, I mean, I knew something about Montaigne to begin with, but if you didn't, you'll grow to love, Montaigne, which is super. I highly recommend reading the books in order, reading the Population 365 first, if you haven't done that. Know that it's a prequel to this one, that it doesn't come after, it comes before. So
I think his use of philosophy, I think his, again, it's blending those worlds of his stories. I think he does a terrific job of not dumbing things down, not only for the reader, but for his neighbors. He treats his neighbors with great respect. And he sort of exposes them in this. They do, and they know that. He was given in that little video you gave us, Tracy, he was given the Narberth population sign when the population changed as a show of respect. That's pretty high praise to come from the township. I think he blends that philosophy. He brings the philosophy into everyday life, just as he does in Montaigne in the Barn. And I think he doesn't expect that we all understand everything, nor does he think we won't. And I think he thinks the same of his neighbors. And I think I think it shows his respect for just the people around him, his insights. And again, I think he brings the two worlds together of that down home folksiness, but the sophistication of a different level of thinking and seeing a larger world beyond that. And then in addition, I think one of the things, I'm not from Wisconsin, but I've been here since the late 60s. So, but I think it's small town more than Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the small town in Michigan or wherever, it's much more about that. The intimacy of it, maybe too much information about your neighbors, but I think it's a small town
Right.
feel.
Any thoughts on that from anybody? Janet?
I thought he did a really pleasant job of talking about people's contentment and why they were content. And he talked about Mark and Mark's life. I don't mean this in any way as a negative, but it's not, other than his New York and his writing, most of the people he's writing about don't live particularly sophisticated lives, however one would define that. And I don't mean that as a compliment either, just, but he talks about, you know, Mark was happy. He had his work, he had his wife, he had his child. He himself, Mr. Perry, was a contented person. And I thought that really came across in the way he described his life. I have a question. I wondered if anyone else had the reaction of, how does he get so much accomplished when he's not really all that planful?
Well, I just finished the book Coop that he wrote.
Yeah,
And that made me wonder too, how he got anything done, because that goes into, you know, after he's married and everything. And if you haven't read it, I recommend it. I told Tracy that so far that was my favorite. But when you read that too, he's got deadlines and he's out feeding the pigs with his daughter. So, I mean, it's really, you know, it's just the way he must just wait till the absolute end and just get it all done.
Yeah, some of us did that in college too, you know, you just, I call it circling, you know, you're thinking all the time. It doesn't look like you're really doing anything, but you're really thinking all the time. So when the time comes, you can just pound that thing out that you need to pound out. So maybe he works that way too.
Don't
he
forget,
say-
he doesn't have a 9 to 5. He doesn't have a job other than that and feeding the pigs. So how long does feeding the pigs take? I mean, really, I mean, his job is to write. So he probably, whatever time he has in the evenings or during the day, that's supposedly what he's doing, I imagine. If he's not on the road selling what he writes.
Well, and I like too what he said. I think he said he inherited from his mother. He's good at thinking long-term and right now, but not so much in between. I'm paraphrasing how he put it, of course, but maybe that has something to do with how he gets it done. It's got to be right now.
Well, have you gone to his website and see how he writes? He writes on a treadmill. He walks on a treadmill while he types. So that's kind of it. So he gets his exercise in at the same time that he's writing. So it's all very stimulating, you see.
Well, he gave me an appreciation for deer hunting that I never had before, because he talked about, it is a good thing in any circumstance, I think, to sit in one place for the duration of time it takes the sun to cross the sky. You begin to attune yourself. And I thought, how many of us have ever just sat outside like the whole day and just
I
watched?
have.
Oh, you did not. watch the sun. Oh, you did hunt. You're hunting. Okay, okay.
It did make me want to do that, to sit outside for the whole day, but not to hunt. So-
Right.
It's cold.
Anyone else enjoy his hunting stories, or do we have any hunters? We have Todd and. Yeah,
One hunter.
Yeah,
I can't tell who's with Amy, but what's that, Jamie?
I think it's in this, I can't read, I mixed the books. I read one book right after the other, so they were kind of mixed together in my head, but the story about him sinking in the marsh, was that in this book? When he was
Well,
out,
that was in 485.
45.
45, okay, never mind, I won't talk about that then.
I was amazed at his detail of minutia, like when he was touring the garage, and he does that in, you know, like if you read Coop, he does that too with all these different things he had to build the pig pen. I mean, it's just phenomenal how he could remember all of those little details, but it makes sense.
I feel like he, a lot of things that happen to him can happen to any of us, but he just tells it a whole lot better than we could, or at least than I could.
Yeah.
Very true.
So some people have expressed that though this book was truck and about a truck, the truck parts weren't their favorite. Did anybody feel that way?
Yeah, a lot of truck.
I will say I expected the truck to be more spectacular looking when it was finished. It's like,
I expect a shiny red for an international harvester. It's green. I don't get that. You know, it should have been a bright shiny red, like your truck, Tracy.
It's the
Well,
primer.
the cover
Primer.
of the book, it was red.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, on
You're
the cover.
expecting a
Yeah.
nice
Right.
little red truck. Yeah, yeah.
your truck is way better looking, Tracy.
Oh,
Way
thank
better.
you. Thank you. Yeah, was anyone else wishing it would have been a full restoration?
No, I
No?
thought it looked better. The pictures that you had, Tracy, looked better than what I assumed it would look like coming out of that garage. I figured it would just be a very rough looking, mechanically and everything else. I never thought it would look that good.
Well,
Well,
he
his
would
brother-
be very happy about that.
So
Well,
yeah,
his-
I mean, I'm
his
thinking about
brother-in-law
getting
did a really
the
nice job
truck.
helping him there.
Yeah. You really did.
Yeah, because rebuilding, it takes a long time. I mean, it was amazing he could do this in a year. I mean, I think I just rebuilt the engine and some parts of the car, and it took me 6 months. And I didn't even have to, I mean, I didn't even do as much as he did. And
Yeah.
so I was pretty impressed that, except for the color. I didn't like the color at all, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
should have gone to red.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Or even shiny green.
Right.
I mean, it had such a matte finish. It was,
Well, they wanted to use it like almost like a camouflage when they went hunting.
Well,
I
A
think
matte,
is.
a matte paint hides a lot of flaws.
Right,
Oh,
that's right. That's exactly right.
A glossy paint will show every
Right,
repair you made.
right.
Right, right. Right.
That's true. And it does look good. You
Yeah.
know, it does look pretty
Right.
good and smooth from what it was.
The fact that
I'm-
the fact that he
hoping
had
that
to
Mark
grind
got a
off so
big-
much stuff, it was unbelievable how much rust and so on he had to grind off just to get it down to something that he could work with again. So
Yeah, and since Mark did most of the work, I'm hoping that he shared some of the royalties with him.
Uh,
I really
I
wish
liked, I didn't like the work on the truck per se, but when he was talking about the history of International Harvester and how they started and how it grew and to other types of products, and then it worked its way back to just more industrial farm machines. That was pretty fascinating. And then all his talk about the femineering and the refrigerators and the
Yeah,
cookbooks. That was very funny, I thought.
Yeah,
Very
what was the
amusing.
woman's name? The
Irma,
Irma.
Hardy.
I mean, I loved his descriptions of Irma, as being the perfect woman. I thought that was hysterical.
It was,
I
I thought,
thought she was real at first, and he liked her because she had the same initials.
I did too.
until you go find it on the web, you actually find
Yes.
the catalog and
Yes.
different story. That's right.
I thought that was part of his writing skill. It's the blending. He starts out with Irma and you're carried along with his love story. He's in love with Irma and you get her steely eyed and how she won't take anything from just her husband, her farmer husband. She keeps it. And then Irma, slowly disappears, but sure enough, we have a love story coming along that involves, in fact, a real woman this time. I mean, I think it's a perfect setup for where the book is headed. And it's just cleverly done. It seems to be perfectly sensible to talk about Irma with an International Harvester truck, but there's more to it than that, I think. I think it's a wonderful device to lead you by the nose and you don't even know it. That's where this book is headed. Again, just such clever blending of elements.
whether it's on the book jacket or I read it on a website, but I noticed that someone compared him to Bill Bryson. And as I was reading, I was thinking about that, having read several books by Bill Bryson, who makes me laugh out loud.
Me
Yeah.
too, me too.
So it's laugh out loud. Whereas with Michael Perry, I found myself smiling often.
Right.
Like I
Giggling.
Or giggling a little bit.
And just, I found myself just smiling at him and what he was writing. I wasn't really, ha, 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 I wasn't laughing out loud. But I don't know, he does have a very good sense of humor in a much more subtle way, I suppose, would be one way of looking at it.
Yeah, if you're ever able to see him speak, whether it's, this Saturday, am I right, Morgan? Is it Saturday that we'll have his keynote? Or if you watch any of his videos, we've got 2 of the DVDs here. Or even I did some of his books on audio, and hearing him and reading his own work and his inflections, it makes it even better, I think. So, yeah. And I think I did laugh out loud a few times, the whole,
I did.
the Scandinavian temper that hit home with my family. So that was laugh out loud.
Or there was as my inner Norwegian said, get it together, son. You are weeping over a documentary on the bail bond industry. That was a pretty good mood.
So how do you think he would be perceived outside of the Midwest? You mentioned the comparison to Bill Bryson, and he's out east, isn't he? I think, but
Appalachian Trail.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how would Michael Perry be perceived to somebody out east or out west or somewhere else? Would Carrie as well still be as good?
I think maybe if it from the standpoint of nostalgia, if they knew people who were from the Midwest or they were from the Midwest, they might think of it like that. But people who haven't been exposed to the Midwest, I don't think so. I don't think they'd be able to relate.
A fellow from Appleton just opened for Saturday Night Live, Wilhelm,
Right.
William Dafoe.
yeah, William Dafoe, and they
Oh, yeah?
gave him crap. I couldn't believe it. And even people from Appleton were on the news talking about the bubbler and different things that were on SNL. So I think that would be
Yeah.
similar to what might happen with Michael Perry. It just depends on how he has a wide audience now. So that might make a difference.
You know, whoever said, was it Jane who said it was more about small town than small town Wisconsin?
Yeah.
I think maybe it was Jane. So when I think of, you know, everybody who's not from Illinois thinks of Illinois as Chicago and the suburbs. But most of Illinois is small towns. And many of them are small towns in the middle of nowhere. And I drove through lots of them every time I went down to the University of Illinois for years. So I think somebody who's from Gibson City, Illinois would relate to it, even though, you know, maybe they've never even been to Wisconsin. Now, if somebody from Boston or somebody from New York City or, you know, would have a different view, I think, but that's more big city than geographic location, I think.
Right.
Don't know.
I think his sense of humor comes out in the books, and that would definitely carry him a long way in other parts of the country, because that sense of humor just keeps you going, and he goes from one thing to another thing to another thing. And I think probably that's how he would talk also. So I think he would do well in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I thought some of his observations were more universal, even though they were pegged to small town. And I didn't make any notes of any specifics, so I can't give you an example, but I thought they were more universal type observations of human nature.
I have a quick question. There were a couple of films of his, PBS films, I guess, that were shown earlier this week. I wasn't able to tune into those. Are those recorded? Can we? Is there a link that we could view them now? Again, how do we do that?
Well, they are both on DVD. I know I have copies as well as several other libraries do. They were called How You Doin' and Where I Come From.
Mhm.
Morgan, do we have them online at all, or do you have to go to PBS?
It's best, I think it's on PBS with their Access Passport as
Right.
well, if you happen to have that purchased, but otherwise,
There
yeah, we have
isn't
to
a
go
link
through
through Door County
DVD.
Reads that we can, wasn't
Yeah,
recorded.
so
Okay.
yeah, we were allowed with their copyright to play it via Zoom and close.
Got it.
So not out
Got
to
it.
Facebook.
Got it. So we have to just go to PBS and take a look for them. Great,
Or
thank you so
get the
much.
have-
DVD from the library.
Yeah,
Mhm.
if you have
okay.
PBS streaming, you can get
Yeah.
it. Because
Yeah.
we got both of them.
Great.
But they were funny. And they do explain some of the things that you have questions about.
I've only seen one, but I was told that the Where I Come From explains a little more about his family and his background, which is
Yes.
always one of the questions I have, because he talks about his family, but he's a little guarded with some of that, so. I think
Maybe
I'll
they
have to
told
watch
him that they don't want to be in his books.
Right, so.
That's right.
Yeah, I
like,
noticed
okay.
he talks about his mom and dad being, married for a long time and happily married and, good solid relationship. But he talks about his mother a lot in the books and then not about his father at all in those two books.
Oh, he talks
I
about
mean,
his-
almost nothing,
No,
very, very little compared to the
Yeah.
rest of the family.
Huh.
Yeah, his dad is in there some, but definitely not as much as his mother or
Right.
some of his brothers, yeah. What did you think about, he was talking about he and Annalise when they were getting to know each other and kind of reconciling their past histories and how they both had separate histories. But she said, we are what we are because of what was.
So
And-
true.
That is a true statement. Coming from us too, that's a true statement, because I always talk about my former life. And I don't tell her about my former life that much.
Oh, yeah, he does. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, he does.
Only when I have little, but yes, we can relate to that. Yeah,
Things
very much.
happen, things come out and well, whatever. So,
Right.
yes, yeah.
I loved that he kept calling her reasonable.
Yeah.
She was very reasonable in her acceptance of his quirks, of how he spends what he does, how he spends his time. Reasonable. I thought that was wonderful. He thought it was endearing, and he was so appreciative that she was so reasonable.
That's what I
And I
say
think it
about,
enabled them to get together.
that's what I say about Cher. Very reasonable.
Well, we don't know what happened in those other relationships. Apparently, he did not think those other women that he was with were reasonable, or whatever. So he had a pretty good list of what he was looking for, kind of thing, I think. Even though maybe he didn't write it down, he knew in his head what he
was
needed.
happening,
So,
right.
yeah.
I think he also said that life was very easy with Annalise and it felt right.
Right.
And that must have not happened with any of the other relationships.
Yeah.
That's true. True statement.
And I appreciated his struggle and their struggle as to where to live, because
Oh, yes.
place meant so much to each of them. And that is a difficult, especially these are older people. They're not
Yes.
like 22. So they have a whole history where they are. And they had to work that through. And again, she was reasonable, but he ended up moving to her place.
Right.
But I did like that description. I thought that was realistic and expected, and he understood it and worked it through. But I thought he did a good job explaining how that worked. And again, they're not youngsters, so they bring a lot to this relationship, including a child.
Right.
So I enjoyed his talk, his writing about falling in love with the daughter too.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. That
Oh,
was,
yeah.
With her. Yeah, I thought that was sweet, because at some point he said, I knew I loved her right then, meaning the daughter. I can't remember the instance, but he seems a kind man.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
I agree.
Well, and one interesting thing to think about, having just read it, this feels current, but that girl, little Amy, is now 21 years old.
Oh,
Yeah.
And how old is his daughter Jane, or their daughter Jane?
Their daughter is 14 now.
Wow.
Mhm.
well, he did talk in one of his films about how when you were having some issues with one of the daughters that, working in the pigsty or working in the chicken house, you can get a lot accomplished relationship wise when you're doing those kind of projects. So,
Mhm, mhm. Mhm. So Sue mentioned a little bit about the parallels in these stories. Did you see some of the parallels, or anything stand out of how both the truck and Michael Perry were kind of transformed over this year we spent with them?
Hmm.
I think Michael has a matte finish. It hides his flaws.
Good one.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I don't want to put Emma on the spot, but clearly she's of a different generation than most of us. And if you would be willing to share your take on this book, being a different
So in
generation,
all,
how did it speak
I
to
read
you?
the first 10 pages, but I'm here
Oh,
to
okay.
my parents.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
But it was good. My dad liked our old trucks, so I could see where that was coming from.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, Emma.
I'm laughing a little at that request because the first time I read Truck was, oh gosh, probably 10 years ago for the Sister Bay Book Club. And I was the youngest at the time in the group, so they wanted to get my opinion, my younger opinion.
And what was that?
You know, if I remember right, somehow we started talking about, I'm not even sure how high school came into it, but something about high school. And they asked my opinion of high school. I'm like, I haven't been in high school for like 20 years.
Oh,
So
funny.
I wasn't able to help much, but
All that good living, you look like you're 20 still.
right, sure, yeah. Or maybe did 10 years ago. Any life lessons you found in this book?
Mm.
That's a bit vague, but any thoughts?
When you start a project, finish it.
Ooh, I like that one.
I need to find a friend like Mark.
Yeah, right.
Really do.
Right. I would agree.
I
He
like
might be
at the end of August, he says that's when he makes his resolutions, and that's, you know, the garden's overproducing, and he says I need to focus on fewer things and do fewer things, you know, well.
That was a good one. Yeah.
Yep, yep.
He has a lot of sayings also that are really funny, but they make you think. And I think that too is part of his appeal.
I thought it was a good reminder, which to just simply enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy your life, enjoy what you're doing. So if you're gardening, enjoy gardening. If you're working on your truck, then work on your truck. If you're going to New York City, then throw yourself into that for the few days that you're there. And I don't know if we can be reminded often enough. And I know at some stages of life, it's very hard for people to do, like the person who's multitasking and making dinner for somebody. You know, it's hard to be living mindfully when you're so busy. But he was doing that, and good for him, and a good reminder.
I think too, it's a reminder that there's the whole world where you are. It doesn't matter that it's a small town. It's the world. It's everything is right there. Might be different, but it's there. And I think it's the humanity that he sees. He's extraordinarily insightful. Do you remember when he visited our he Zoomed with our book club? Was it a year ago? Just a year ago or so? And I think I asked him if it was difficult being insightful and seeing so much of the world in everybody around him. And he said it is, and it drives his family nuts. But I think he sees that world in that small town, and I think that's part of his appeal. That it really is. It's not restrictive to be in a small town. You just have to see it.
I think his appeal too is that he appeals to everybody. He speaks to every person, can relate to his minutia. You know, you don't think about it, but it makes you appreciate more about where you are right now yourself.
I don't remember which book he said this in, but it was in the afterword, if in one of the books where he said people wondered what the townspeople thought about being in his book, and he said he found for the most part that they were more insulted if they weren't included than if they were. And I thought that was really sweet, and it spoke a lot to his relationship to the town, and that they really appreciated how he wrote about them with total honesty, at least from his point of view, but with great affection. He was writing about them. So even the neighbors across the alley, I thought, what do they, they were destroying that car, and they thought it was easier to just try to turn the car over to get the tires off than to find a jack. I mean, I thought that was hysterical. Was that in this book or the other one?
That was this
It
book.
was
In this book.
Yeah, I thought that was just so funny. And I thought, well, I hope that those were neighbors that saw themselves in this book that would take the time to read the book. I don't know that they would, but that they would, and that they would be different for having read about themselves so affectionately and in a humorous way. And I think he has the ability to do that and to just be so kind, really, to everybody in his descriptions.
Now, have many of you also read Population 485?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Some, but not all, or any of his other works?
Nope.
Not yet.
Jane and Sue have.
Yeah.
Sue said she mentioned Coop. Jane, what have you read?
Montaigne in the Barn.
Oh, yep, which Jamie's read too. Anybody want to speak to how they compare or what they think of his writing in the other books?
Similar but different. Similar but different. Montaigne is it is similar, but and maybe Jamie could speak to this. It tends toward more of the thoughtful end of the philosophy. It's poignant. It's sad. Whole sections of it are quite sad. So it has a different emphasis, but it still is very much a part of that. Of his neighbors and observations, pulling things together from the specific, the minutiae to the more abstract. It's a delightful read. Delightful might be the wrong word, but I did like it a lot. Mhm.
Yeah. I particularly liked in this book how he handled the politics. People asking him kind of, it's the divisiveness in the community. Obviously, this was like 18 years ago. I mean, the time that he's talking about, right? So even then it was divisive, and even more so now. So I'm wondering what the town is like now. I can't wait to hear him in person if he's going to address that. Because he was feeling it then, and he handled it so tactfully and so warmly, and still with great affection for people on both sides of an issue. And yet he was very clear about where he stood on things. He wasn't just trying to sell books. No, he was still trying to be honest. I just thought that was amazing how he rode that fine line there. But I wonder now on his very recent essays or works, has anybody read anything from the last couple of years? Kind of where he stands on things. I imagine it would be much more difficult now to do what he did then.
His latest, if it gives you any clue, is called Peaceful Persistence.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, his two latest, Peaceful Persistence and Million Billion. I believe these are both more just collections of essays, not as much like Population or Truck or even Coop, where there's kind of an underlying story that ties it all together. I think a lot of his other writings are more individual essays that aren't necessarily tied together.
In Coop, his subjects are the chickens, the pigs, and raising his daughter. And he blends that same thing, and he uses all the work with the animals, teaching his daughter about them. It just really is wonderful. But I felt like I really got to know his family better, because it's the birth of Jane. It's just everything. It was really a good book.
I also read a few years back, Visiting Tom, A Man, a Highway, and the Road to Roughneck Grace. So this is also worth reading, and it's a lot about his visits with his neighbor Tom and his wife and what they've seen over the years. And that's a good one to read too.
There's a very short video on YouTube called Visiting Tom. It's 2 minutes.
Mhm.
And it just sums up how Michael handles and talks and relates to his neighbors in that 2 minutes. He visits Tom, and you get to watch Tom shoot off his cannon, which he does every day.
Oh, God. Oh, yes.
I had another question, and maybe some of you truck people can help. My copy of Truck is signed by Michael Perry. And he wrote in it, double clutch. Now, even after reading the book, I don't really understand what it means to double clutch.
Well, did you ever do, Tracy, did you ever do that when you're trying to shift gears?
Not intentionally, I guess.
Okay,
Or
well,
what?
sometimes if you have a hard, if it's hard to shift, especially in a big truck or something like that, sometimes you have to double clutch to get the damn thing into another gear.
You push it down on it twice?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Good.
So,
He
Yes.
was presuming that you would be able to drive his truck, Tracy.
I guess so. I guess so.
well, no, maybe he didn't need to do that. I don't know, in his truck. But if you drive some of these bigger things like a dump truck and things like that, for somebody wimpy like me, that's hard to drive, let me tell you. And so, yes, you have to do a lot of things, or you grind all the gears. That's what happens there.
Yeah.
So,
If you don't double.
if you don't know.
Oh.
Yeah.
Tracy, can you help me remember can you help me remember the name of the book and the author? It's about a man who had a head injury. He's recovering from that with his memory, and he was making kites. He made kites, and he was from a small town up north.
Oh, that we did that for Door County Reads a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's
Virgil Wander.
Virgil Wander.
Virgil Wander.
Mhm.
If you liked Michael Perry, I highly recommend Virgil Wander. I found that book really delightful.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my husband's favorite reads. So it's nice when he participates too. Any other comments that people haven't been able to share or get in? Anything you want to talk about with Truck or Michael Perry's writing in general?
Choice.
We didn't
Good
cover
choice.
it all.
Good choice this year. Another good choice.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that it's been 15 years since the first Door County Reads. It just doesn't seem that long ago to me. And I've participated.
Have you read most of them?
In almost all of them, but I don't remember. I should have kept a list so I could reminisce, more easily. Such a good thing for the community.
Was Station 11 last year's Door County Reads?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
That just last year? I've been curious whether anyone has watched the series on HBO Max.
Yes. Very good.
We just finished it, and has anybody else watched it besides Jamie? We have HBO Max free because of a phone, so that means not everyone has HBO Max. It is extremely well done, but they really, really softened the prophet. So
yes.
My only comment is for those of you who read the book and appreciated the book, and decide you might want to watch this, it's 10 1-hour episodes. And the acting is excellent. And I guess they felt like they had to sanitize it.
Yeah, the mother too. I think that it was just, maybe they felt it was a little too harsh on the religious right, evangelical kind of. I think they just didn't want to go there.
Maybe
with this, yeah.
But so that's my only comment, because I had to keep going back to the book thinking, this is not how I remember this.
No, not at all.
No, I mean, some of it was very, very true to the book, but
Right.
the whole traveling symphony part was, but the prophet really was.
Yeah, and the prophet's mother, who was really a nutcase in the book, and not at all so in the film.
Just curious. Thank you.
I always find I need space between when I read something and when I watch a creation of it, whether it's a movie or a TV series or a play or whatever. I need a little space, otherwise I pick it apart too much.
Is the library going to get that series? We can't stream here because our internet is just awful. So
At this point, last I checked, there wasn't a DVD release date for that.
Okay.
But if it does come out on DVD, I would buy it, yes. Because I want to
Probably
watch it
not,
too.
because it was just released a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be a while.
Release dates are all kind of up in the air now. So it's not as standard as it used to be since COVID began. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes some things don't come out on DVD at all anymore, so. It's anybody's guess. Any other thoughts from anyone? There are quite a number of events still coming up, so I hope you're able to join in for some of them. Let's see, where are we? Saturday is both the Michael Perry keynote address, and then in the morning is the Door County Firefighters and EMTs panel discussion, so that should be a good one too. We've got some trivia coming up, songwriter workshop, play readings, and of course more book discussions. If you didn't get enough here, you can join other book discussions, both of Truck and Population 485. And you can find all of the events listed on the website doorcountyreads.org. And there's also a link there if you wanted to fill out an evaluation form. If you like this or didn't, feel free to let us know. This group here, not part of Door County Reads, but next month we will gather on the first Wednesday to read The Lost Man, or to discuss, hopefully we've read it by then, but to discuss The Lost Man by Jane Harper.
Yeah, I've done that in 2 other book groups already,
Have you?
and I'm looking forward to discussing it with all of you, because I've just found that the different groups have, I learned something else new about other people's perspective on the book and about this family situation described in the book and everything. It's a fascinating book to discuss in a group. So enjoy, everybody.
For those of you who are budgeting your reading time, I'll say this about it. It's was, for me at least, was an absolute page turner, and I read it in a matter of hours, like almost in one sitting.
It only took me about 3.5 hours to read it. It was that good.
It was just.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, so it'll be fun.
Yeah, I listened to it on audiobook, and the Australian gentleman who reads it is fabulous. It's lovely to hear it read in the, the accent of the culture there. That's really fun. So consider doing that.
Good idea.
It is, and what you said about different groups, it is interesting to see how different groups discuss or, talk about a novel or a writer. I've watched some of the other discussions with the Michael Perry books, and I gotta say, we were much more positive.
Seriously,
Oh, wow,
really. That's
I think
interesting.
some people didn't like him quite as much as we did.
Wow.
And why not? What did they say that was not agreeable to them?
For some people, it was the truck. They couldn't get into the
Oh, yeah,
repairs and
yeah.
everything.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I skipped some of those pages. I kind of got it. I got the thing, and I would read the first sentence and the last sentence in some paragraphs to know if there's going to be any jokes or humor in there. Then I would read it, but it just totally,
So you're not
literally
gonna
about
do
nuts
well
and
on the
bolts
quiz.
and rust. I was got into it. So.
So when
Now,
we
if we
have
have
a
a-
quiz on what's in the workshop, Jamie, you're not gonna. do
Or all the different parts that they took to rebuild the truck. That's going to be a trivia, part of the trivia.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna place in the, I placed in the trivia contest last year.
So the
I
trivia
don't-
is not necessarily about the books.
No,
It's
I
going to
know.
be about Wisconsin.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's Bonnie trivia. So You don't have
Okay.
to know all the minutia.
Okay.
We won't have to come with our dictionaries.
I can't promise not the dictionary though. Because
Oh,
Wisconsin has a lot of interesting words. We're having a Badger talk tomorrow about English in Wisconsin.
Right.
And
Oh, that
there's
should
some
be fun.
interesting words that come.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to sign off. Thank you so much, Tracy and Morgan and all of you. It's lovely seeing all of you. I'm so appreciative of Zoom these days. So I know we're getting all tired of it, but I'm really appreciative of it and look forward to seeing you all next month.
Thank
Oh,
you
it's
very
nice.
much.
It's
Thank
nice
you.
that it lets us
Thanks,
do
Tracy.
things like this. So yes,
Thanks,
thank you
Tracy.
all for coming,
Morgan.
and hopefully you can attend some other events too
Yeah.
and come back in March if you're able to come to discuss The Lost Man.